Hello, everybody. Welcome to the PixelPlay podcast, the only podcast available in 37 fictional countries, including Spira. I'm Adam, aka CSRadical, here, joined with my co-host, Kaylan, aka Ktastrophy. Hi, everybody. I didn't mean to screw you up there. You're thinking, who the heck is this random person starting off the show? But, Kaylan was like, hey Adam, I know you're a cool guy, but do you want to, host one show? And I'm like, you know what? I'll give it the old college try. So I'm here starting the show off with a bang or a fizzle, depending on which way you look at it. It could be a bottle rocket or a firework. You can decide here in the audience. But like I said, here with Kaylan, how are you doing on this wonderful Tuesday of the 2nd of March where it's not, minus 15 degrees with wind chill anymore? It's freaking awesome now, especially when we're looking at really warm temperatures over the weekend. It's going to be pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's going to be nice. I got to be honest, I'm kind of regretting my decision. I was kind of like, Adam hasn't really hosted or taken the driver's seat in a podcast. Let him give it a shot, and I'm just realizing that you are far better at this than I am.
It's almost like I have podcasted another show for over 60 episodes. It's like I've got some experience under this non-existent belt that I'm wearing.
Well, my concern now is that the bar has been raised, and I'm either going to have to step up, or we're going to disappoint a lot of people, and just now making this harder for myself. So kind of regret my decisions, but we've already made choices, so let's roll.
I'm just going to assume that disappointment is like a usual thing we do on the show, so it wouldn't be that far from par of the course. So I mean, it works out kind of nicely that way when you really think about it.
Our audience has come to expect something of us, a very low bar, and so we don't want to change what they're expecting or anything. They have their expectations. We want to make sure we meet them. It just happens for us that bar is very low.
The way we look at it is, as long as you don't have to worry about tripping over the bar, if you need a shovel to get to our bar, we've done our job correctly. So
exactly, yeah, exactly.
So we have a number of things we wanted to go over with. I mean, we talked about Nintendo Direct on the last episode, and now Sony decided, hey, let's try to do our own version of it. So we are going to talk about State of Play. And then we're going to talk about Anthem, or what is no longer Anthem, as that has been canceled, and will be leading into Dragon Age 4 having quite an interesting change, which we will get into down the stretch. And then lastly, both of us, first on the PixelPlay podcast, are going to have a review of our own, although there's a twist. Kaylan's got a game, I have a sort of game. A kind of almost game. A soon-to-be game, if you will. So, but yeah, let's start off with State of Play. So I guess I'll kick it off to you, Kaylan. Was there anything... Actually, no, I won't even start with that. Do you think between now that we've had Nintendo Direct and State of Play, which do you think seemed to have a little more impact going in?
Going in, I think Nintendo had more hype going in the sense that they kind of were, it was the first Nintendo Direct in a long time. We didn't really know what to expect. I think, to be honest, PlayStation did it better, but I don't think it was an amazing State of Play. I think what Sony did is they tempered our expectations a little bit. I mean, we still had some people saying, we're going to get a Horizon Zero Dawn trailer or something like that. Some people were saying God of War. I didn't think that was going to happen, but I figured I'm going to admit I'm referring to me. I thought we were going to get a Horizon Zero Dawn trailer, just like a little snippet, but it wasn't there. So I think some people got their hype, a little out of check when it came to State of Play, but it was a lot more tempered than it was for Nintendo. So I think going in, Nintendo had more hype, but I think PlayStation came out better, but I still don't think it was an amazingly strong podcast or State of Play.
I think that would largely have to do as well with the fact that, Sony only took about half an hour of our time out rather than Nintendo, which was just an endless cascade of 2 to 3 minute trailers, especially for games that didn't need it, as we discussed last week, where there were a lot of games that could have been quickly done in like a 10 to 15 second hit piece where it's just, boom, here's a game, boom, here's a game, boom, here's a game. Whereas Sony was like, we know what you're here for. Let's just show you a bunch of stuff that you're already pretty much waiting for and a couple surprises here and there, a couple of new things, and then let's get the hell out of here because we know you guys got to go back and play whatever else the hell you're doing right now.
For sure. I think that's where PlayStation succeeded was, we don't have that much to show, or we're not going to show that much right now. It was something like 10 games, deeper dives. So like, hey, here's what matters about it. But they also, it was shorter. It was half an hour. Here are some, I'm not going to say, like there was a lot of indie games, but like nothing was super AAA in the sense of, oh my god, I can't believe they're releasing this.
I mean, they were
So
AAA, but not in the sense of like the God of War level AAA.
not the blockbuster first party, the tentpole titles. So I think it was good that it was a shorter state of play. That it was a little underwhelming in the sense of it didn't have those big blockbusters, but it wasn't also an hour of smaller titles. And maybe it's just me as a PlayStation fanboy, the Sony pony of the podcast, but I thought that the games that Sony presented, while not necessarily something like, oh my goodness, I want to play this immediately or this spoke directly to me, I felt it was a little bit more inclusive in terms of who it appealed to, whereas I felt Nintendo's was a little bit more skewed to, a segment of their audience.
Yeah, I would agree. And not to mention, but I've watched every state of play they've ever done. I think this is probably the best one they've put out just because it was the best compact level. Like every game seemed to bring something to the table where there wasn't like every once in a while you'll get those games where it's like, what's that doing in here? Like you're just kind of staring at it being like, you could have just done a quick trailer like aside from that. This didn't need to be here. Whereas like I felt like everything they put in there at least was like some level of intrigue depending on what kind of game you're into. Like, sure, I'm not into Oddworld, but there was definitely an audience for Oddworld. Even the Knockout City one, like the Fortnite meets like dodgeball thing. I'm like, that's a cool concept. Like, I can see people liking that. So there was definitely something through each of all the trailers that I was like, okay, no, I think this has purpose being here because I think there's somebody here that's going to take to that and really like it. And then it did cap it off with giving you a little bit extra with what's going on with the upgrade to Final Fantasy VII Remake, including that new DLC. So I felt like they did enough to at least be like, look, we didn't give you nothing, we gave you something, but we also didn't like up the ante so much that you're going to expect every state of play to be this blockbuster video package, which it's never going to be. And every time I love hurting myself by literally going on Twitter when these things are done just to see people raging about how nothing showed up in it. It's like, guys, they've done this like 4 or 5 times now. Like, you have to expect at this point that they're not going to be giving you, like, you're not getting a Metal Gear Solid remake. You're not getting these kind of level announcements in a freaking 30-minute video package that they're putting on a random day in February. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was going to say, one of the things that I thought they did really well is that I felt like the PlayStation State of Play, it felt more curated. It felt like with Nintendo, they kind of just had grab everything off the shelf and we're just going to throw it onto the screen and see what sticks. Whereas I felt PlayStation was a little bit more curated in the sense of we're going to go through and we're going to go a little bit deeper in these games. Quick synopsis, what it's about, what you do, here's the story. Like they tried to sell you on the game as opposed to just putting the game out and letting it talk for itself. So,
and I think it makes perfect sense too, because Sony is being known as the quality in terms of their top games, whereas Nintendo, I'll be completely honest, Nintendo has the high quality games, but anything aside from what Nintendo first party is coming out with, it's a lot of nothing, or it's a lot of ports, or it's a lot of indie games. So they almost feel like they need to justify showing people like, hey, there's a reason you bought this console. Look at how big this library is. And that's where they just shovel all the games in front of you just to prove that, hey, see, numerically, we have a bunch of stuff for you to play. Whereas Sony's like, we know that we have a bunch of stuff. Let's just show you the best of it, and then you guys can scavenge for the rest if you want.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it. Nintendo kind of throws everything, and it's, for the most part, like if you go on the Nintendo eShop, and this is not to say the PlayStation Store isn't riddled with stuff like that, but you get a lot of like the shovelware aspect. And I don't know, and this might be a little bit of a sidetrack, like that shovelware aspect, that wasn't always a case with Nintendo, was it? Like,
no, I think it's a digital thing altogether. As soon as it was a lot easier to put games up on a storefront, I think that just made it possible for everything. I think it's been like this since the Wii.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like this is a Wii thing. Like, once the Wii exploded in popularity and it like became the number one selling system, I felt like Nintendo kind of just became a shovelware kind of.
Well, I mean, how many times would you walk into like a Walmart and look at the shelf of Wii games, and there's like carnival games, party table tennis game, like just a crap ton of these little mini game discs that are like $40 because they figure, oh, your grandma's gonna want to buy this and think that it's something cool for you. Yeah. And it was kind of like that with like the PlayStation 2, where everything was on that console because it sold so damn well that people just threw whatever they could on that console, hoping to make a sale. And I think it's like that now with digital storefronts, where people just figure, okay, well, guys are going to get bored of playing whatever they're doing. eventually someone's just going to go, what's on the new tab? And they're going to look at stuff. So people just figure, if I put it on the store, I'll make something. Because somebody will want to do it. Especially with also the YouTuber culture, where they'll pick random stuff that looks like it might be crap and play it because they know that gets views too, if it's a steaming pile of garbage too.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those you don't want to, I was thinking like, well, why wouldn't you want to be like, hey, we're the gaming store that curates. We're going to make sure the stuff that comes on there is quality. It seems like all of them kind of just have a very low bar that it's just, yeah, your game doesn't, make the console light on fire. Great, put it on the store. But I guess you don't want to be that console that has, the next big indie and you're like, nah, this isn't for us. And then you miss out on that. So you want to be open and available.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to State of Play, though. So
yeah, we got
everything
there.
that was sidetracked. Oh, it's a podcast. That's nothing out of the ordinary, I think, for any podcast these days. So when it comes to everything that was revealed, what was the one game that to you stood out the most?
For me, I'm trying to remember the name. Is it that Kena game or?
Yeah, Kena Bridge of Spirits.
Yeah, that one looks amazing. Not necessarily my cup of tea, and it's one of those ones I'm going to kind of wait on to see when it comes out. But honestly, the artistic direction of that game is awesome.
It is jarring how much it looks like a Pixar movie. Every time I see a trailer for it, I'm like, this is insane to me.
Yeah. So, we'll see how it sticks the landing. But, for me, that was the one that comes across as very impressive.
I'm surprised that it's going to be out in August, and it's also only going to be $40, which tells me that it's probably going to be a shorter game, which is not a bad thing.
No.
It almost seems to me like they're trying to test the limits of what they can do with this console and see like how they can really make this honestly downright gorgeous game that looks like a freaking movie. So I think it's almost like a proof of concept, and if it ends up being something big, who knows? Maybe they turn it into something larger with the next game.
No, I completely agree. I think one of the things that makes it interesting is that $40 price range. Because, having that idea where if you have to charge full price for the game, you now need to justify it. Why am I paying, $60, $70 for a game when it doesn't need to be? If it's $40 and it's a smaller title, like, not to spoil anything, but like one of the things I liked with Bugsnax is it stayed its welcome. It didn't linger around like other games did. Like Assassin's Creed I talked about last week. Great game, but just overstayed its welcome. And I would be happy to pay slightly less for a more truncated game that, knew what it was, as opposed to trying to justify why I'm paying full price.
And given that we're so used to paying $70, $80 for games, especially here in Canada, where we're paying the 10 extra bucks for every copy, because the dollar is amazing here in this country.
Yeah, well, we have monopoly money, so
yeah, no shit. But when it comes to say a game like Kena, which is going to be cheaper, I think it also lends it some extra, I guess, gives it some extra rope. Because now that you're not paying the full price, people are thinking, okay, now I'm not going in with AAA expectations. I'm not expecting to be like, this is going to be a blow me away game before I even put the disc in. Now they're being like, all right, it's $40 at launch. Yeah, screw it. I'll give it a shot. This seems like something pretty interesting. So you have a bit more of an open mind going in. So if it ends up being this really blow you away kind of experience, it just amplifies that further, and you just become more and more interested in whatever this developer or this series comes up with next. And that leads to, if they want to go even bigger and make it a full price, like whatever, if it's an open world game or if it's a much longer game, like they can do that and fans won't go, but is it going to be worth that? Because they'll have played the first game and went, wait, they did this in this much amount of time and they didn't charge me full price. I think these guys actually are doing something right if they're going to charge me full price the second time.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good strategy if it ends up working out. Now
my question to you is, what do you think the chances are this is going to become a August PlayStation Plus game?
Given that they've announced the price, I would say I would be very doubtful of that.
To be fair, yeah, but Destruction All-Stars also had a price tag.
But it was also a full price tag.
That's true.
Because this is a much cheaper tag, I think it would be smart for them to leave this one and maybe, I don't know, crap, like Final Fantasy VII Remake is free this month right now, and that game's only been out like not even a full year yet. So it's very possible that they could be like 6 months down the road being like, well, screw it, here, you guys, anybody who's probably going to buy it has gone and bought it. So here's your shot, guys, go have fun.
Yeah. So I'm just taking a quick look because this is game. I'm just curious who was making it, and so the developer of Kena, Bridge of Spirits, is Ember Lab. Now, I was like, have you heard of Ember Lab before?
It sounds familiar.
Okay. So for me, I'm looking at it, and there's nothing that really stands out to me here. So like the game looks incredible, like we talked about, but it doesn't look like they've ever made a game before. The only one that I'm seeing, so I'm looking at their portfolio. Um, they've got things like Majora's Mask fan film, Euro Cup 2016 little clip, MLB and Majestic Athletic. I don't know what this is. Let me take
So it
a
looks to me
look.
like it's their first actual game. It looks now that I'm looking into it a little bit as well. It looks like a large part of what they were doing was much more video based.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how that's going to translate in terms of into a video game. So the only one that I see here that they've made, so there's yeah, so like the only game that I see here in their repertoire is the game Colonel Karts Racers, which looks like a KFC branded kart racing
Oh,
game.
these guys got experience then.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe like my skepticism for this game has gone up a bit. Like, I don't know. Like, it looks amazing, but we'll see how the gameplay translates. So maybe, I don't know. This is now kind of leaning towards that. Maybe this is going to be a PlayStation Plus game.
I mean, the way that the gameplay looked in the trailer looked perfectly fine to me. It looked like your standard third-person hack and slash kind of fighting stuff. It reminded me of a lot of older school games like your Ratchets or your Jak and Daxters. It had that kind of feel to it, and that's not the easiest game to pull off, but it's also not the hardest game either. I don't think they tried anything too complex. I think again, a large part of what's going to make this game what it is going to be its visual style. So
Yeah.
I think large in part, as long as this game's story can carry it, I think its mediocre gameplay, if that's what it's shooting for, can still pull it across. Because again, if it's a shorter, like 4 to 6 hour game, if the story ends up being like pretty decent and like almost kind of the kind of quality you'd expect from a Pixar movie, I think people will be a little bit forgiving if the gameplay is not like transcendent.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I know I could describe a game that had a compelling story, and amazing graphics, but gameplay was so-so, and that's Order 1886, and we know how that game went. Now, granted, that was being charged at full price.
And it was supposed to be the system seller when it came out.
Yeah. To be honest, I thought that it was a pretty okay game.
It was fine.
It wasn't... It got more hate than I think it deserved, but it was more of a tech demo than it was a game.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Adam, I'm sure probably the one that what's the game that you came away from that you're like, oh man, this is what I came here for?
Oh, I was totally all about that Five Nights at Freddy's thing, because you know how, actually no, you haven't known me long enough on this podcast to know that I am literally like the anti-horror person. So, no, it was Final Fantasy VII. I know I'm shocking pretty much everybody out there. The guy who's put so much time into JRPGs, like a 4-game Trails of Cold Steel series that probably nobody listening to the show has ever heard of, is like, oh, he's interested in the Final Fantasy VII remake stuff? What a surprise!
Shocking.
But yeah, I still haven't even played the game, and I've downloaded it now since they put it on for free. I don't know if I'll touch it because I think I'd rather wait for the PS5 version, because apparently the free copy will not get you the upgrade, which is... I guess I have to accept that, because it would be pretty silly for me to get a free game, then get a free upgrade. That'd be kind of silly, but I'm still kind of upset, because now if I want to play this Yuffie DLC that they revealed in the Remake Intergrade trailer, I need the PS5 version because it's built for that version. So I'm like, okay, so I could play the free game, but then I'd have to wait for a copy of the PS5 one to be cheap so I could play the DLC. Like, I wouldn't just buy it just for the DLC, so it seems kind of stupid. I'll probably end up just waiting down the line for it, but holy hell did that trailer make me go, I really need to play this game. And then Sony was like, hey, by the way, we're putting it for free. And I was like, I wasn't hoping to play it now.
No, I think that decision, I'm kind of interested. Like, this game looks incredible, and like the theme kind of speaks to me. Like, I'm a bit of like a sci-fi kind of guy, so I think this kind of hits the theme for me. But I've never played a Final Fantasy game, but this one,
I think there's a demo for the original remake, so I checked that out first to get a sense if you like the battle system.
There is, and as the thing, I played the battle system, and like that demo does not sell it well. So I was like, no, I'm not.
Which is weird, because it was the opposite for me when I played because I'm gonna we usually save the hot takes for the end of the show, but hot take. I don't even think Final Fantasy VII, the original, is a top 5 Final Fantasy game. I think it's a little bit overblown by some people because it was their first Final Fantasy. But I played the demo and I went, holy crap, if that's what I'm playing for the entirety of the game, I'm probably going to like 7 a lot more than I used to.
Yeah, for me, not having that JRPG turn-based, any sort of like, because it's a mechanic that's very JRPG-ish, if my understanding is correct.
It's hack and slash with like a turn-based JRPG like addition to it.
Yeah, so it's not something that jive with me, and I played it, and I'm like, ooh, it seems cool. I might like it. Like, I know people love that sort of combat system, but for me, it didn't sell on me to go out and buy the game at, full price or like slight discount. But when I see it on the PlayStation Store for free as part of my PlayStation Plus membership, I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe I should. Now, if I'm ever going to try it, now is the time too. And I think doing it,
if it's only going to cost you time, what's the point in not?
Exactly. And I think it's a perfect idea because I'm going to go try it and maybe it's going to jive with me. And then, I'll go and buy the PS5 upgrade to get the Yuffie. That's what it is? The Yuffie?
It's Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. It's
Okay.
the actual upgrade version, and then the Yuffie DLC. I don't even know if it's named yet, but it's just something that's going to come.
So for me, it's a good way for people who are skeptical to get them in. And it's really smart because I often imagine that when you put a game on PlayStation Plus, your sales just end up tanking. I imagine that a lot of people start selling their physical copies. Like, they're probably flooding the market now at GameStop, kind of saying, hey, I'm dumping this before the price goes down. Because once it's there, pretty much, I mean, it's what, like a couple million people have this game now. So like, there's not going to be a huge demand for physical copies. So I think
that's why I think they were smart in not making the upgrade free. So that way, if you own a PS5 and you want to play it in 60 frames 4K, then you'd still have to at least give them some money for it. So I think that was wise as a business perspective. Just as a fan, it's like, oh, cool, I got this free copy sitting here, and I probably won't play it because I'd rather wait for the upgraded version anyway.
Yeah. But to me, like, I don't know if it's just me or not, but they were doing those like upgrades between the two, and I was like, cool. I don't see much of a difference.
Oh no, when I saw that too, I'm like, guys, I don't see it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like if you show me like the frame rate, the frame counts, then I'll notice it. Like when Digital Foundry gets their copy of it and they do their review of the upgrade version, then you'll see it because you'll see the frame rate and you see how like they'll show you some textures like really zoomed in stuff. But what they showed you in that trailer, you're like, it looks slightly darker, I guess.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was looking at. I was like looking at it, and I can see like the frames per second improvement. Like, that's something that's relatively easy to see, but they're showing like fog effect, and I'm like, no offense, like I get that the fog takes more processing power, but like we used to use fog as a way to like hide detail, and like
I'm not gonna lie too. When they showed the fog, I'm like, this actually makes this look worse, to be honest.
Yeah, you're losing the detail, and like there was a couple points, like the ray tracing as well. When they're showing the sun, I'm like, okay, now I'm just like blind and I can't see some of the detail you put in, and it's almost, I don't know. It didn't sell me on the upgraded version.
Yeah, the upgrade version probably would have helped more when they get into the second game because that takes place outside of Midgar. And Midgar is meant to be this like dark and dreary place. Like, it's meant to be this like just factory, like just destroyed like slum area. It's not meant to be a bright spot. As soon as they get out, like that's when you pull out, like you won't know what I'm talking about because you haven't played the series, but this is when you pull like Costa del Sol or the Gold Saucer and you show all the vibrant colors and stuff like that. That's when you show off how amazing the upgrade's going to look. In this case, it's just like, oh, the dark blue looks slightly darker now.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Midgard's supposed to be this, dingy kind of grungy place, I mean, that's kind of what, like, I don't know. It doesn't really show off the technical fidelity of the PS5, but they had to show something. I get that they had to show something, and it seems like like it says it's better, so I guess it is.
Yeah, and I mean, for an end of show like trailer, that's a pretty good game to throw out there without even the fans knowing that it was going to be free or announced to be free like a couple days later. That's a pretty good way to end it by getting people hyped up and then be like, oh yeah, and it's free.
Yeah, are you surprised that they didn't announce that it was free at the at the State of Play?
I wonder if because they knew they were gonna not allow a free upgrade, that they probably wanted to have a bit of space in between so people wouldn't be like, oh man, this upgrade's going to be so cool. And then they find out like 5 minutes later that, oh, by the way, you can't get the upgrade with the free copy. I think they wanted to put a little bit of space to get the hype train rolling, probably. That's my best excuse for it, I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it might have something to do with the fact that maybe like the UK, Europe is getting a different one, but no, they're getting it as well, so it wasn't that either. But yeah, you're probably right. It's like, don't want to diminish, because I mean, this month is a great month for PlayStation Plus, so maybe saying, hey, there's a free upgrade, but you're not going to get it when you get this free game.
Yeah,
might have kind of put a little bit of a damper on it.
But I mean, either way, like we were saying, the state of play wasn't horrible. It was fine. It was perfectly fine. It got a couple of things out that got people interested. There was a little bit of something for everybody, I think, and it didn't demand too much of your time. So, I mean, I'm not going to give it 2 thumbs up. I'm just going to give it thumbs in the middle, being like, hey, you didn't piss me off. That's a pretty good thing to do.
Yeah, I felt like they knew what it was. They knew how long it needed to be, and I think this is something that needs to be taken away. Is just know how much, like, don't waste people's time.
I would like companies to do this for like every quarter, just to be like at the beginning of a new season, like say beginning of January, beginning of April, beginning of September, or I guess not September, it'd be like August, and then like towards the end of the year. Like maybe you do 3 or 4 a year and just be like, hey guys, this is what's coming out for the next 3 to 6 months, just to kind of keep you a heads up. And if people understand going in that it's not going to be an E3 level presentation where it's going to show you stuff that's going to be out 2-3 plus years from now, instead it's showing you things that are coming out now, coming out soon, or getting stuff added to things that are already existing. If you go in with that, it's not going to be too disappointing, and that's what I go into these things thinking now. It's not going to show me something big. It's just going to show me a bunch of stuff that is pretty much already done and ready to go.
It's a double-edged sword, because you're right. How do you want to get people interested and excited, and you can't be like, hey guys, this is our boring state of play. Next quarter is our big one. And then people are just going to start tuning out for the ones that don't matter, right? Or the ones that, don't have as much. So you have a careful balance of getting that hype train going, but not having it go off the rails.
Well, and it's just because it's too easy for gamers to get themselves hyped up. So,
Yeah.
We're kind of good at hyping ourselves up over nothing.
Yeah.
Like Cyberpunk.
There we go. We hit it. Did you hear that as a result of the hack, we never talked about the hack, but I mean, I don't think we have much to say. It's kind of garbage and shame on the people for doing it. But because of the hack, their February major update has been pushed back.
Well, that's wonderful. It's a good thing I got 10,000 other things I could be playing while I wait for this thing to come out in a decent working condition.
You laugh, but I am itching so badly to play it.
I'm not going to lie. I still want to play it, but there is a part of me that's like, I don't know if I'm actually going to be upset if I never play it now. I think I'm finally at that acceptance point where it's like, you know what? It's not the end of the world if I never get around to it.
See, my thought is I think that the bar has been set so low for me by people who are rightfully so saying that it wasn't delivered. It didn't deliver what it promised. But I think I'm going to go in with such a low expectation that it's going to be like, this isn't as bad as people say, especially now it's had at least one major update, that I'm hoping it's going to go well. Hopefully, that's what I'm planning. That's what I'm hoping for. We'll see what happens, but I think that's where my thought process, because I'm not going to wait for the PS5 upgrade, because the fact that they got the hack, they've already had to push back the patch for February. Like, it's not going to be until end of the year at the earliest that we're going to get a PS5 patch. But by that point, we're going to have Horizon Zero Dawn, and we're going to have other games coming out like that time that I'm going to want to play instead of Cyberpunk.
I mean, they better hope that they have this thing at least in decent condition soon, because the sooner we get to a pseudo-normal out of this pandemic, the more and more stuff that's going to start coming out again, because people aren't going to be off track anymore because they're going to be in these crazy situations working from home or all this other stuff. As soon as things can kind of get back to a semblance of normal, you're going to start seeing that steady flow again, and they're going to start getting lost in the shuffle if they don't get moving. So they better take this opportunity for the rest of the year to really get this thing going, because as soon as we hit 2022, I'm starting to think that it's going to be pretty crazy for the next couple of years with all the catch-up that's getting played.
For sure.
But you know what game is not going to get a chance to play some catch-up? Anthem.
What's that? No.
Because it's gone. It's finally done. There was an announcement not too long ago that they were reworking it, called Anthem Next. It was their way of trying to salvage it, and there was I don't know if it was from EA directly or if it was like a rumored statement, but it was being told that EA was going to announce sooner than later what the future of Anthem was going to look like, and sure enough, we found out that that future was you have no future. They finally said, you know what? I mean, let's be honest. The game failed exponentially. It did not retain basically any of their consumer base. And EA probably just looked at it and went, look, you guys are working on Dragon Age 4. This is BioWare, by the way. You guys are working on Dragon Age 4. You've just, assuming at this point, because it's supposed to be out in May, you guys have pretty much put in the final touches on the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and you're starting to work on what's going to be the sequel to the original trilogy that everybody is desperate for because they want something that makes Andromeda forgettable completely. So you guys got two major projects. Maybe we should probably take this one away from you and just end it now because it looks like it's not going to come back. Let's just start focusing on what you guys have been good at, and let's just try to, salvage back some money by making a crap ton with Dragon Age and Mass Effect again.
Yeah. Now, do you think, Adam, Anthem's death, do you think that's a result of the game itself, or do you think that it's a result of just not being able to compete with, in that marketplace?
I think it's twofold. I think the core of it is the game. I really don't think BioWare understood what they were getting into making. As somebody who played Destiny and Destiny 2 both in their beginnings, a lot of people said the same thing about Anthem, where they went, you guys had Destiny and Division, who both had horrible starts to their life cycle. One of them recovered in Destiny, and one of them kind of managed to somewhat piece themselves back together with Division. But Destiny was the core example. They managed to get themselves out of the hole that they put themselves in and made a game that has retained a massive number of people. And I'm still surprised by how many of the friends that I made from Destiny that still religiously play that game. Because I'm burnt out of it completely after like 2,000-3,000 hours. And these people are 5,000+ hours in, and they're still happy with it. So they've carved a pretty good market for themselves. Anthem did not do anything to follow up from the mistakes that Destiny and Division made when they first started. Everything that game did was exactly the same pitfalls that Bungie and Ubisoft, I can't remember what...
Ubisoft.
I don't know if it was like a side company that did it, but Ubisoft published it.
No, it is Ubisoft that made it. I'm going to look it up. I think it's Ubisoft Montreal, though.
You might be correct on that one. But yeah, but they didn't... or BioWare did not learn from any of the mistakes that those two companies made when they made their first editions. They made all the same mistakes, and instead of patching them really quickly, they took way too long, and it got to a point that people just went, nope, we're done. And
Adam, sorry, just to interject, developers were Massive Entertainment and Ubisoft San Francisco.
Okay. So yeah, it just ended up being a series of horrible events that they just couldn't recover from. And as somebody, like I said, who played a lot of Destiny, I heard the same things that Destiny did at the start, except the one thing I didn't hear was a month or so later, fixes coming in that address those problems. It just seemed like nothing was happening. And they weren't adding a lot of extra content. And I knew kind of from an early get-go that this specific design was not going to go well. I said it to some friends who I play with Destiny, where I said, I don't know what Anthem is going to be able to do with this, because now that they have this verticality of the jetpacks and stuff that these suits have, you suddenly have these massive maps that are going to be so lifeless, because you can't have a game that's all about firefighting on the ground, but then also have this vibrant, interesting, like multiple stuff going on in the air too. You can't really do both. So when you have this verticality, all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of dead air, I guess pun intended, but a lot of dead air on the map. And sure enough, like, it's really cool to go through these maps the first couple of times you're flying around in it, but then when you realize that all of the stuff you're looking at has no significance to it, you're just going to these very specific areas where all the fighting is. And because of that, so many of the resources were probably pooled into making these amazing looking maps, but not enough on the actual content of the game itself, and I think that really held them back.
No, I completely agree. I mean, you have more experience in the games of service sphere than I do. Do you think that the market is saturated? Like, do you think there is room for a new games of service to come in? You've got Destiny, who's arguably probably the major one in that genre.
Oh, 100% they are king.
Division 2, I think, is niche, but still has some legs. Like, is that market saturated? Is it declining? Like, where do you see the games as service genre going in the future?
Well, we're going to find out in about a month's time when Outriders comes out, because so far from, and I'll obviously talk about it once we're done here with my review of the beta, but I've looked around and I've seen the reactions from it, and a lot of people are really excited about this game now since the beta's come out. There's a lot of mistakes with it, and like I said, I'll get into it down when we get to that point, but I think games as a service can be done right. The problem is, a lot of these games are not made to be very substantial at the start. Whereas, at least with Outriders, it sounds like the end game is going to have quite a bit of content when it's done. So it looks like it might have some decent staying power for like the 6 months that they'll need to start making the next big thing. Whereas a lot of these games suffer because once you're done the main campaign, there's nothing. It's just grinding. It's just an endless grind to get stuff. You're just trying to get the best stuff and you're trying to collect, which is cool and all, but not everybody's going to stick around for that. So you're going to have this. A lot of these games have these stretches where it's really, really heavy on player count, and then it just starts to wither away as they get what they wanted out of that specific new expansion that came out, or that event that came in. They played enough of it and they're done with that, and then they go away for a while. I think a lot of companies really need to start looking at games as a service as not a moneymaker, but as a commitment that may generate money in the long term. Because I think a lot of them go in and just see what Destiny did and say, oh, we'll just make crap tons of sales right off the bat. That's not necessarily true. And even if it is, it may mean that you get that one sale, but you're going to put a lot of money into making more expansions for this game, and no one's going to show up for them anymore. Because if you don't make enough for the first few months of this game, nobody's going to stick around to see what you're doing in 6 months. There's no way. There's a million other things they can be doing.
I completely agree. I think one of the benefits that Bungie had is that Bungie, that was their game. Their game was Destiny, so they had to make sure it worked. It's not like BioWare like you said, has a bunch of things cooking right now. They have Dragon Age Inquisition. They had Andromeda they were working on at the same time. So there was a certain aspect of, you have to, we don't have the time to dedicate on just this like you do with BioWare.
Yeah, and I mean, thankfully, it sounds like EA has taken what's happened with Anthem and applied it to the rest of BioWare's projects, because apparently now Dragon Age 4 is going to be specifically a single-player RPG, which is the best possible sign. I think that it really just comes down to that I'm starting to at least be happy with the fact that companies are starting to notice that maybe single-player isn't dead. Because that used to be a comment it was about 5 or so years ago, where every major publisher like EA and whoever else were saying oh, single player games are dead. It's are you kidding me? Just because everybody's playing Call of Duty doesn't mean that any single player game that's worth its salt isn't going to make a crap ton of money. I mean, look at every Sony first party game that's come out in the last 5 years. When you talk about Last of Us, Spider-Man, Horizon, God of War, it's pretty clear that single player games make you a shit ton of money. It's just companies see what multiplayer games offer in skins, in loot boxes. They see that money, but they also kind of look past the fact that those games have to be good in order to get people to buy those things. Because the reason that FIFA and Madden, they get those games is because their fan base was carved out ahead of time. Anthem can't do the same thing because they don't have a fan base to pull from. This isn't... Even Avengers, we proved that the game has to at least be good to get people to start. Avengers should have been the easiest layup in the world, and they couldn't do that right. So it goes to prove you that you can't just slap microtransactions on a game as a service game and expect to make money. You still got to make a game that's worth time. And if single player is what's going to get you at least the copy sales, and then you can worry about the rest of it later, then that's probably the better option because it might be safer.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever a situation where single player was ever dead or even at risk of dying. I think it was just companies didn't see it as profitable, right? You can make a 4 or 5 hour campaign in a shooter and then have some maps, do some balancing, and you're good to go. And it's going to constantly drive revenue. But you're looking at what is arguably the biggest game in a pretty large genre. I mean, if you think about it, outside of Call of Duty and Battlefield, there weren't a lot of other players in that arena. Whereas with a story-based game, you have tons of options, you have tons of games out there. And the other thing too is that with this single player games, it's not a cohesive group. Like you get a Call of Duty game, and it's going to take that group and it's just going to migrate them to the next one. You're going to have some stragglers and some fall off, and you're going to get some new players, but you're generally going to have one cohort that is going to be moving with you with each iteration. So you have that fan base, similar like you do with FIFA and Madden and everything. But when you come up with a new game, like Destiny 2 probably sold better and faster and easier than it did with Destiny 1 because they had that cohort and they said, hey, we're migrating from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2. And everyone's like, or most people were like, okay, cool, and went with them. So I think it's easier to have that player base captive, not in like a pejorative way or a negative way, but you have this captive audience and they come with you with each iteration. Whereas a single player game is I can come to it 2 years, 3 years, 10 years later if I want to, and it's going to be the same experience versus a Call of Duty game, which kind of, or even Destiny, where it's like at that moment you want to be at when it's at the zeitgeist.
Yeah, and at the core of it too, games as a service are going to eventually come to the same point that MMORPGs did, where you're going to realize that you're not beating the kings. It's going to get to a point where enough companies are going to try as a games as a service and realize you're not going to compete with Destiny. And I don't know if there's a real like solid second, because with MMORPGs, it's clearly World of Warcraft, and then number 2 is Final Fantasy XIV. Now, there are games around it that have carved decent niches, like you have Star Wars The Old Republic, you have Elder Scrolls Online. Phantasy Star Online 2 has suddenly come out and at least done some decent stuff now that it's migrated here to the West.
Or Eve,
but I mean,
Eve Online.
Yeah, like there's different forms of stuff, and they've carved out their own stuff. But you don't see, like, E3 is not showing you the next big MMORPG anymore. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing that. You're seeing expansions maybe, but you're not seeing like the next WoW killer, because that's what everybody thought they were going to be. It's going to get to a point, and I don't think we're here yet, but probably within the next 5 years, you're going to stop seeing games as a service kind of games coming out to this like massive extent, because they think there's money to be made. They're going to start realizing, oh shit, this is an investment. We got to really put our best foot forward if we want to even make a chunk of this market, let alone compete with, honestly, the king that is Destiny, and then whoever else is kind of fighting for that second spot.
Yeah, I think my timeline's probably a little bit shorter. I think we're going to have 1 or 2 more games as service, and then that as a genre itself will sort of become its own niche genre. You're going to see certain aspects translate into the next genre. But yeah, I think to be honest, I think the games as service platform, I think the players are there. I don't think it's going to grow much more. I think you've got your Division, you've got your Destiny, and I think like you're going to have a couple of smaller niche ones come out. But I think for the most part, I think the big games as service, like with Anthem, with Avengers, like they're starting to realize it's hard, and I think a lot of publishers are going to start backing away from that.
Yeah, and I mean, unless you got something else to add, that seems like a great point for me to transition into to Outriders.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. Outriders.
So the beta started on Thursday, and I've been curious about this game since it was first announced. It's done by the people or by People Can Fly. I don't know if you've ever heard of these guys before.
Yeah, I have. They're the Bulletstorm people. Are they Bulletstorm, or are they? Yeah, they're Bulletstorm.
I believe so. Yeah, Bulletstorm. Most people remember them from the older days with Painkiller.
Yes.
They also did Gears of War 3 and Gears of War Judgment. I think they co-developed Gears of War 3, but they worked on Judgment as a solo call. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. They were co-developing with Epic Games for Gears of War, and then Judgment was their first one. I'm just looking at it now. Outriders is really their first like major IP that's gonna suddenly like really take a crack at things. Because I mean, Bulletstorm was like a fun little thing. Painkiller was like what got them to the dance, but Outriders seems like that's going to be the first one where they really take a crack at it. And when I saw the original trailer, I'm like, oh, so it's Destiny but third person with a kind of a different like space flair to it. I'm like, okay, yeah. This seems like an interesting idea.
So Adam, I'm like, okay. Back up real quick. Whoa. So I myself, I haven't seen much of Outriders. I don't know much about it. Walk me through like basically what is Outriders? What's the gist of it? I don't want to derail you, but I'm kind of just want to get the foundation.
I was actually about to get to that. So
my apologies, sir.
So you basically hit the switch, and the switch just didn't do anything because it was already there. It's like, cool. But yeah, no. So this was their first attempt at something different, and what it honestly is them taking what we just talked about with games as a service like a Destiny, and then just applying a third-person shooter lens to it instead.
Okay.
So for those who don't understand what I'm talking about, a game as a service basically refers to a game that it's like an MMORPG, but it's something that like every so often they're going to keep adding stuff to it. Usually games as a service means, hey, we're going to give you a decent chunk to start, and then we're going to keep adding to this game as it goes along. It really is kind of the same format of an MMORPG. They just kind of changed the name of it a little bit. So Outriders is essentially a third-person shooter. You play as one of 4 different classes, which I'll get into in a moment. So the crux of the story is that Earth, due to... It's not really explained if it's like some alien thing or if it's something that we cause, but Earth just goes to shit. Like, it's not going to be habitable for much longer, so they start trying to find somewhere to go. And they find this planet in another galaxy, or no, maybe not another galaxy, but another like star system in the same Milky Way galaxy, I would imagine. As like, okay, this is going to be our new home. And they send a bunch of you there. You are what's known as an outrider, which is basically you're a colonizer, essentially. You're the ones that are going to go out there and see if it's safe. There's a massive ship with a bunch of cryopods waiting to deliver everybody onto the planet as soon as you kind of like just ensure that this place is good to go, like we're ready. And as you get down there, everything seems fine, like it's a pretty beautiful planet. And then all of a sudden you see the storm in the distance, and that storm doesn't end up being a very typical lightning storm. It's almost like this magic-ridden, like just destructive, like superhero, like kind of level storm where some people die and it gives some people superpowers. I guess there were some nuclear-infused spiders in that storm somewhere. You know, there's always some nuclear waste to end something to make people get superpowers, but it creates these people called Altered, which is basically guys with superpowers, which ends up being what your character can become. There's 4 different classes for that. And it's really just you wake up, I think it's like 31 years later after the first storm, and you find out that they tried to colonize and the planet just was unforgiving, and they were all stuck in this one piece of land and they can't get out of it because of the storm. So it's just been war for 31 years trying to just keep what's little that they have. So you're basically going from, oh, this is kind of cool, to, oh, everything is gone to shit. And it's just you fighting, whether it's all these factions or the wildlife, which we didn't really get to in the demo, which I think is going to be really interesting once that unlocks, because there are a lot of cool things they even show in the demo alone that's like, man, if I get to fight that, oh, that's going to be intense. So there are 4 classes to this game that you can choose from. One of them is, well, 2 of them are very like close range, like have fun and go nuts kind of stuff. One's more of a mid-range and one's much more of a long range. So I've gotten the chance to play all 4. The first one is a Pyromancer, which is basically like a fire mage. You have these abilities that you can like throw fire out at people that damages them over time. There's one move you can do where it actually like almost puts a bomb to this guy, and if you kill this guy with regular guns, he will explode and damage anything else around him. So there's cool stuff like that. It ends up being a pretty nice like first time kind of class where it doesn't demand too much out of you. I like the close combat stuff, though, because I love chaotic messes of stuff. There are 2 classes on that. There's the Trickster, which is one with time powers, so if you hit somebody, it slows them down. And you can also like teleport behind people. But there's also the Devastator, which I think people are going to really love, because it's essentially what you would get if you were Superman. You have powers where you can trap bullets and reflect them back. You have this crazy stone armor that makes you take a lot less damage. You have essentially a superhero jump where you fly into the air, you pick the enemy you want, and you frickin' crush him. And then you have just one where you create a shockwave. And that's definitely been the most fun one. The one that I've struggled with the most is the long-range class, the Technomancer. And that's not because I think it's a bad class, but because I don't think it's a good solo class. I think it's a great support group, because you have things like mines you can throw. You have a turret that can freeze people. You have a spell that, if I'm not mistaken, I think like creates toxic ammunition, so it makes people lose damage over time and can spread. So it seems like the kind of stuff that'd be really good for helping people. But altogether, all 4 classes, I didn't hate any of them. I just preferred some over the other. What I really found about this game that was just really good for the little that I did play of it is that the story is actually pretty interesting. In fact, it's so interesting that I wish Mass Effect Andromeda had adopted this idea. Instead of, coming to a planet that's already garbage, be there before it becomes garbage, And also the camaraderie in the characters is actually pretty interesting. Like, I actually really enjoyed the voice acting that was given so far in the demo. I actually thought they did a pretty good job of establishing, like, oh, these people are actually, like, talking to each other, not in a room and just staring at a script. It sounded like there was an actual conversation going on, where so much dialogue in voice acting sometimes can come off very one-sided. Like, they're more talking to a wall than they're talking to the characters they're supposed to be talking to. And then in terms of the combat's pretty damn fluent. I mean, it's a little bit buggy here and there because it's still a beta. There's going to be a few things they'll have to touch up before it gets released. And then the most important stuff is the loot, which is the biggest part of a games as a service game. And I gotta tell you, I didn't even get legendary, or I don't know what the best class is, if it's exotic or some other name that they have. Like, sometimes it could be epic. The names are always different. But I've seen what the really cool stuff looks like that I haven't even gotten yet, because sometimes it's a luck of the draw, and I don't usually have a good luck of the draw. But the stuff that I've seen looks pretty damn cool. And I made this complaint with Avengers, where you get loot, doesn't change how you look. Whereas, at least with Outriders, you get stuff. It may not look amazing, but it's early in the game. Destiny's the same way. Like, the early armor is not that great looking. It's more when you get down the road, where you start finding some cooler stuff, and then you can really start to really mess with your armor sets. That's the really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But from a beta perspective, I went in thinking, all right, I'm going to play this. I'm going to have a little bit of fun here, and I'll be like, maybe I'll see what it's like down the road. I played it, and within the first 2 characters I tried out, before even getting to the entire classes, after 2 of them, I'm like, I'm really going to have to keep myself from pre-ordering this game, because this is a lot of fun. Because it's getting me that Destiny kick that I used to think that I wanted, and it's actually reinvigorating it. I told my friends that are big Destiny players, it's like, dude, like, I'm getting the kicks coming back to me right now playing this game, and it's scaring me, because I don't want to go back to me playing one game for like a year and missing out on so much stuff.
They got you. They're coming back.
But yeah, like, if anybody's curious, and it's not like a timed beta as far as I know. I think it's on until the game comes out. So it's something that if people want to give a shot, and it's crossplay even with the beta. You can play with people on different consoles or on PC in the beta. It's not even it's not like just play a couple of levels and then be done with it. No, you can go and play with friends on different consoles already, and it's just a quick beta. Like, you can finish one class after you've done it once and you don't want to care about the cutscenes. You can finish the beta again in like an hour. It's cool. Pretty quick. So it gives you just enough to give you a taste of it, but it certainly leaves you wanting a lot more. And by the sounds of it, there is a lot more still to come.
Cool. And this is on Xbox, PlayStation 5, basically all the major consoles?
It's basically on everything that isn't Switch, I believe.
Fantastic. Cool.
But yeah, and I think you got one as well, don't you?
Yeah, so I started playing Bugsnax, I think, just over a week ago. And I finished it last night, platinumed it. What an awesome little game. Perfect palate cleanser to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Had very little knowledge going in. I knew there was something about Bugsnax. You ate them. Like, it's a weird game. So if you're not familiar, you are basically like this weird creature. You basically look like a combination of like a Muppet and a groundhog. And you are a journalist. You're brought to this island at the request of Liz Megathorn. I don't remember her last name. Essentially, this famous explorer who came to this island saying you should come check it out. And you do. And you get crash landed and deserted on the island. Everything's gone wrong. The little town has broken up, and you have to kind of bring everyone back together and figure out where this Liz person is. It's an awesome little game. Gameplay-wise, it reminds me a lot of like Pokemon Snap. You go around the island, and there's all these little bug creatures, so like animals made from food-based things. So like there'll be a baked potato that looks like a spider, or I'm just trying to think of what are some of the other big ones. Like a bowl of soup looks like a spider as well. Like they all kind of look like creatures based on food. And so
the best one was the dragon sushi, like the massive freaking dragon that was sushi.
Yeah, so there's like a massive dragon sushi roll. Like, it's really cool. Some of the ones that they came together with. One of the neat ones, there was like a sub, like a party sub kind of thing, cut into like 4 different pieces.
Oh, Sandopede.
No, it's not Sandopede. It was something else. Sandopede was something else. Maybe? No, you might be right. It might be Sandopede.
Yeah, like the sub
like sandwich
thing,
I got.
right?
I'm like, no, the Sandopede wasn't there. It wasn't on the beach. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense now. I'm caught up. Yeah, so it's really cool. You've got like different little puzzles and way to catch them. Some Bugsnax are aggressive, some aren't. Some are, passive. Some get frightened really easily. So you have to kind of figure out how to attract different ones and how to get them to kind of trigger each other. Really fun, easy puzzle game. Something that I felt I could play by myself, but I wouldn't be uncomfortable. Like I'd play it with like my son with me or whatever. It was pretty easy, kid friendly, but like not. Yeah, it was like kid friendly, but it wasn't like to the point that I felt like I was kind of being patronized for playing it. Like it was. It's got a good level that appeals to everybody.
It does have some dark themes to it too. Like there's some hidden stuff in there that like adults.
Yeah, so there is the story is a little bit dark, and has some like overtones that are somewhat, not necessarily not unkid friendly, but just not. It would kind of go over them a little bit, I think. But like I said, it was fun to just go around and catch all the bugs, figure out how to do it. You'd see a bug up in the air, like how the hell do I get that? And it's like it's a pizza, and I'm like, okay. Do I like attract it with like a ranch dressing or something like that? And it's kind of neat just to see how those how that works in your mind. We were trying to make these connections based on what you know of like foods and stuff, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. So I really liked it. It was easy to get through. I think it took me about 15 hours, give or take, for me to platinum it, and I wasn't like using any guides for the most part. I think I had one or two where I was stuck. But yeah, characters were fun. The story was cute. Gameplay was great. I liked it. I thought it was good for what it was. I have no major complaints. A couple of the Bugsnax were a little convoluted. I wish there was a fast travel system between the different biomes. Is that the term? Biome?
Levels, biomes. I mean,
whatever.
Essentially.
Yeah. Just because like there's like 2 to the west, 2 to the east, 2 to the south, whatever. And sometimes if you need to get from one end to the other, you had to go through a couple different sections. But I liked it. I'd highly recommend it. I think it was a perfect game for PlayStation Plus. I wouldn't probably not have paid for it, and I'd say probably that sweet spot for paying for it would probably be like $20-$30 maybe. But as a PlayStation Plus game, it was such a great idea. So cute. It's kind of weird, like the whole. I have a lot of questions about like the transformation of like, do your things change? Like if you're a strawberry, like if you eat a strawberry, like is your hand decomposing like a normal strawberry? Like because I know strawberries, they don't last very long usually, and like you've got it now as your hand, and it's like, are you now just having like decomposing limbs? Like, I don't know.
I think I said this last podcast. Like, you need to stop asking those questions, sir.
Yeah, I know. I went down a rabbit hole, and I'm just looking at it now, and I have so many questions about these Bugsnax.
I mean, if you want to go further than that, it's like shit. Like you only see the limbs changing. Like how much deep do we go with that? Like, do other things change? Like, do you suddenly start having like I don't know, like pepperoni nipples? What's going on?
I would say you would. Yeah, I think if you had a pizza, you probably would get pepperoni nipples. But now the question is, it's like we look at something like, let's say there's something made of strawberry, but one of them is like a daiquiri. Now, is the daiquiri being made from the strawberry, or is it like both of them are just separate things? Like it raises a whole bunch of questions. This ecosystem perplexes me.
I mean, it raises the idea. We already know what breeding happens in the animal world when it comes to like cats and dogs. Like, what do you do with Bugsnax? Do you start like, what do you do? Do you want to make like some crazy like friggin' like strawberry fries? I mean, Lay's has strawberry potato chips in some parts of the world. I mean, you could do it.
Do they really have strawberry potato chips?
Yep.
Where is this?
Oh, Asia, 100%.
Yeah, and so we're made fun of for having ketchup chips, but strawberry chips are a thing?
Have you seen how many Kit Kats that like Japan has, for example?
Oh, I've seen the Kit Kats of Japan.
Yeah, no, it's about the same with everything else. Lay's has a bunch of stuff over there too. It seems like we don't get any of the fun stuff here. Like our fun stuff here is when we get like I don't know like chicken wings is like our crazy flavor on chips.
Yeah, no, I remember when Lay's was doing like that when they went through that weird phase where they hired some guy who was just high all the time and was like, man, what if we made like chips flavored like maple syrup, which once again were disgusting, and like kind of like not everything needs to be maple syrup. But they had some really good ones.
But it's fun to buy ones.
Oh my god, they had ones that was like the wasabi ginger one. Those ones were so good.
There's always some diamonds in the rough when they do the random flavors.
I miss those.
Sometimes when you experiment, you come out with some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, but it's just a tease because then they never release it, and then you're like, oh, I'll never have that flavor again.
Or they do it, but it's there for 2 months. Like, I'm really praying to God, this is such an aside, but like Pizza Pops right now have bacon mac and cheese Pizza Pops, and I think they're better than any other Pizza Pops that exist.
That sounds amazing.
And I know they're going to go away. I know they're going to go away, even though they're
So
amazing. But that's
I
just
just
how it
imagine
is.
you're gonna stock up your fridge, and it's just gonna like you're gonna have a stockpile.
I try to, but they're always never getting stocked anymore at my grocery store, so it's disappointing.
Just gonna have like you're gonna buy like a deep freezer just for the pizza pockets, and then you're gonna have to move, and you're gonna be like, okay, I need to make sure that the fridge stays cold while we move.
Yeah. Protect the pizza pops.
It's gonna be like that episode of Seinfeld where they had like the extension cord to run like the Frogger game across the road. It's gonna be like that. It's like I need to keep the power. Yeah. So no, honestly, a little bit of a detour there, but yeah, Bugsnax, fully recommend. Fantastic game. I think it's definitely accessible for everyone. You know, you can have someone sitting there beside you being like, "Oh, try this, try that," to get them to do it. It's a lot of fun. A couple of the tools were a little maybe not explained clearly, but overall, I thought it was a fantastic game. Highly recommended. Yeah.
Now, for the arbitrary question, what is the score you would give it?
I mean, I don't see any reason why it couldn't be a 9. It doesn't do anything groundbreaking in terms of, oh my god, this is revolutionary, but it knew exactly what it was. It knew what it had to be. It was a perfect. It was designed well in the sense of it didn't bite off more than it chewed, but it didn't leave me wanting or lacking anything.
And I know that people are going to hear that and be like, he's giving it a 9. Oh my god, like Last of Us Part 2 is like a 9 to most people. You do you understand that like we're not critics. We're not doing the 9 as like comparing it to other stuff. It's like, dude, like we really enjoyed it. That's what a 9 is to us.
So for me, a 9 is you know exactly what you're trying to do and you nail it. So Last of Us Part 2 is trying to do something very different from what Bugsnax is trying to do. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's not what I mean, it is what the product what it finishes, but it's not a comparison between the two. It's what are you setting out to do and did you accomplish it? And for me, Bugsnax did that.
Yeah, because I mean, we're not saying that Bugsnax is as good as Last of Us Part 2. We're not saying Last of Us Part 2 is only as good as Bugsnax. We're just saying that for what Bugsnax is supposed to be, we enjoyed it for what that was, and it did it well. Whereas with Last of Us Part 2, you enjoyed it for what that was and what it did.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be like, oh, I gave this game a 9, so I have to give this a 7 because it's no way I can compare it to this. It's not the same thing. I think that way of looking at things is kind of backwards, sort of.
A greasy dive restaurant can be a 10 out of 10, and a 5-star Michelin whatever fancy like steakhouse whatever can also be a 10. They're going for different things, and they can equally like nail what they're trying to do.
It's just a different 10 out of 10.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I don't want every game to be like The Last of Us, but if that's what is considered a 10, then how does anyone else achieve that? So no, I think Bugsnax is perfect in the sense that it accomplished exactly what at least I wanted out of the game and what I envisioned they probably wanted to do with it.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, the little bit that I played with it, I enjoyed it. I never finished it just because I think at some point I hit like a point where I'm thinking, okay, I'm doing the same stuff. Like I'm pretty much got what I want out of it. But for the like 6 to 8 hours that I did play of it, I loved it. It was great. And it's the kind of thing that if I had kids, it'd be a great thing to play with them too, because it doesn't really require that much. And even if you fail, it's fun because you're still getting to explore this world where there's freaking little strawberries running around going, strawberry!
Yeah.
And it's cute.
No, I think you raise a good point. Like that is a criticism, I guess, that could be raised. I did have like a small part at one point towards the end where I'm like, okay, this is getting it does get a little repetitive after a while. Like there's not a huge challenge or anything presented. Like once you have all the tools, you've pretty much seen it all. There's nothing drastically that changes. So that could be a criticism leveled against it. But it was nice in the sense that it wasn't a game that I had to spend a lot of. I wasn't stressing that it's like a very chill game. And I think I had that feeling at one point where it's like, yeah, this is kind of getting repetitive, but it was towards the tail end anyways. So I figured it was just me kind of wasting time a little bit and then just kind of burning myself out. But yeah.
Yep.
So we'll dock 0.5% off that.
For sure. But otherwise, I mean, for what it was, it's fun, and that's really what matters in the end of it.
Exactly.
So any last thoughts, or I think we're good?
No, I think that about concludes everything for me this week.
Well, awesome. Well, I guess since I did such a great job starting the show, I might as well do a fantastic job ending it and making you further jealous. So, With that being said, thank you so much for checking out this episode of the PixelPlay podcast. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at PixelPlayCast. We have pixelplaypodcast@gmail.com. I'm trying to remember how I set up all this stuff. It's so difficult sometimes. If you're listening to this on an audio service, we do have it available on YouTube. If for some reason you want to just stare at a picture frame the entire time, that's youtube.com/pixelplaycast. Actually, I don't think there's a username for it yet. I think you'd have to just search that on YouTube. I think I'm still waiting. I think there's requirements on YouTube before you can actually have a custom URL. So I think we're still waiting on that.
Yeah.
But at least with audio services, if you want a full list of everything that we have, it's anchor.fm/pixelplaycast. That'll give you all the available links that we have. I think we're still waiting on Apple because for some reason with Anchor, Apple takes forever to boot up. So we're working on it, but at least we're on Spotify. I will happily take that. That's a good start.
Yeah, please go check that out. Feel free to rate us, leave nice reviews, comments. Please do that. That's how we justify our existence and our self-worth. So please go and do that.
Please, we need to be loved. No, nobody retweets my crap on Twitter, so I don't know what else to do.
Really, if you don't have the approval of strangers, what do you have?
You have nothing. That is just how it is. But yeah, with that being said, thank you so much, everybody, for checking out this episode of the PixelPlay podcast, and we will be back next week when I guess Microsoft's not doing a video conference anytime soon, so we're not going to have a third thing to compare it to. So we're just going to have to hope for something interesting in the next week.
Next week's topic: where the hell is Microsoft's content?
Yeah, that we'll do that for an hour straight. Just be like, Microsoft,
isn't it
what
weird
the hell?
that Microsoft is not saying anything?
No, next thing, Google Stadia comes out with a 30 minutes.
No, theirs will be a 3-hour conference. They just will be so tone deaf.
And then the following week, Cyberpunk Apology, 6-hour stream. It'll just keep upping the ante over time.
Cool.
But yeah, that being said, one more time, thank you so much for checking us out, and we will see you next week. Have a good one wherever you may be, especially those of our fans in Spira. God, I love me some Besaid Aurochs.
Bye, guys.